Vito Genovese was married, and then his wife died, left him a widower with a child. And so a short time later, he married a woman he knew from around the clubs that he owned. His wife died in 1931. And so he knew this woman from around the clubs named Anna Petillo Vernotico. And the clubs, I mean, these were gay clubs in Greenwich Village, and they were illegal at the time. So he knew her from around, and by 1932, she was pregnant with his child, which was a problem because she was married and had another child from her marriage. On March 16th, 1932, they solved that problem. Her husband, Gerry Vernotico, he was only 29 years old, was found strangled on a rooftop at 124-126 Thompson Street. It's a sixth-floor tenement on the corner of Prince Street. The residents in the building said they heard scuffles up on the roof at about 2:30 in the morning, and it lasted a few minutes, and then nothing happened. But, it's New York. So 12 hours later, the janitor went up there. He found the two bodies. They had Sashcord nooses around their necks. They were used not so much to strangle them, but to drag them up to the roof. It looks like Gerry tried to fight off the killers. His knuckles were busted. He caught the worst of the beating. It was so much so they had to use fingerprints to identify them. One man, when they found him, one was face up, one was face down. The guy that was killed with Gerry was Antonio Lanzo. He was 28, 305 East 28th Street. He had a criminal record for robbery, assault, larceny. Joe Valachi, who played a part in this, said later on that, they didn't want to kill Lanzo, but he showed up on the crime scene, so they figured, well, we'll kill him too. Lanzo and Vernotico, the husband, Gerry, had both been arrested on grand larceny charges together. The charges were dropped against Lanzo. Detectives, when they got there, they followed this trail of blood over two rooftops to 161 Prince Street, where Gerry lived, his dingy, unfurnished two-room apartment on the third floor. They found blood stains in an iron bar in the corner. The cops figured that the killers lured these two guys into the room where they bound them, bound them, tortured them, beat them to death, and then dragged them unconscious up to the roof. The janitor said that, quote, a short, dark man, end quote, rented the apartment for 2 months, and they had paid the rent only recently, a week before. So police closed the case. They figured that Gerry and Lanzo had tried to muscle in on the local alky cooking operations, and they let it go at that. No one tied it to Genovese. The actual murderers, according to Valachi, were Peter Mayon and Michael Barisi. Barisi worked under Anthony Strolla in Greenwich Village. After the murders, Barisi, I'm understanding this correctly, panicked, and he hid out in Harlem, and that raised suspicions. And so they said, well, he's going to talk. Why is he panicking? Joe Valachi says that he disappeared. That's all he says. Anyway, Anna Vernotico, she married Genovese 2 weeks later, and she became Anna Genovese. At the time, Genovese was living in a Dangler mansion at 152 Red Hill Road, Middletown. It was a 35-acre estate with a 3-hole golf course, a tennis court, a working model of Italy's infamous Mount Vesuvius. I'd love to have seen that. The couple's luxury apartment where they lived also was at 43 Fifth Avenue. They completed in 1905, a limestone, beautiful building. It's later on Marlon Brando would live there, not in that apartment, but in that building. In 1937, when Genovese fled to Italy, the Dangler mansion burned down. I'm pretty sure today it's a public park in New Jersey. A year later, 1935, after he married her, Vito brought Deep Cut, a 1928 mansion on a 40-acre property in Middletown. Just 2 years into the marriage, Vito killed Ferdinand the Shadow Bossia. Around that time, the New York prosecutor, Thomas E. Dewey, was raging hell. He's putting people in jail. He's cracking down, and he decides that he's got to put Genovese in jail. So once they found Bossia's body, Bossia was dumped in the Hudson River in 1937. One of the hitmen, this guy, Peter the Hawk Rupolo, who had one eye, admitted to the police that the order to kill him had come from Vito Genovese. So in late 1937, Genovese, he's facing a murder rap for Bossia. He's got a rat they can't get to. He doesn't know what he's going to do, so he takes off to Italy, and he leaves Anna alone with 3 kids. These 3 kids, by the way, one was One was her daughter, of the recently murdered Gerard. The other one was Maria. I'm sorry, that was Maria. And then there was Nancy, who was her daughter with Vito Genovese, and her son Philip, who was also a son of her and Vito Genovese. I found a picture of Philip and some of Maria. I put it here for you. Anyway, to bring in an income, Anna started working more and more down in Lower Manhattan at these drag bars and gay clubs. Again, illegal at the time, but big profits in them. And she siphoned off the profits and she sent them over to Italy. Sometimes she delivered them to Italy. And apparently in Italy, Genovese is doing everything he can to stay alive. He's investing in Vito Mussolini's fascist party. Not that he believed in it one way or other, but at that time, Mussolini was on the way up. Apparently, according to the FBI, he was also providing cocaine to Mussolini's son. I don't know if I would have done that. Anyway, Anna was a co-owner in these properties at several clubs with a soldier, a Genovese soldier named Stephen Franci, F-R-A-N-S-E, Franci. Franci was born in Massachusetts, but he was charged with overseeing the Genovese investments, legal and illegal, while the boss was away. So anyway, finally, Genovese gets hauled back into the U.S. in handcuffs in June of 1945, and he's got to stand trial for the murder of Ferdinand Bosilla. But that didn't happen because June 10, 1946, the prosecution's witness, Jerry Esposito, he shot to death and left on the side of the road. And the other witness, Peter Latempa, is found dead in his cell where he was under protective custody. So without anyone to corroborate Rupelo's, the Hawk's, testimony, the government case just collapsed and Genovese was allowed to walk on June 6, 1946. So he bought he moved the family to Manhattan. He kept an estate in New Jersey at the same time. He put $250,000 in renovations. That'd be about $3.7 million today. This whole time he can't explain his income, so remember that. Anyway, he decides, I'm back. He told Anna, I don't want you to work in the clubs anymore. It's unseemly. I'm a big boss now. She refused, and eventually she left him in 1950. She filed for divorce for $200 a week in maintenance. This is a lot more than it sounds like today. And so Vito Genovese just refused to pay the alimony, which was stupid. So she filed a divorce statement saying he beat her, he was a violent guy at home, and so forth. He countersued. Anyway, the unheard of happened on March 2, 1953. Anna testified in open court that the Genovese family had been involved in narcotics, were involved in narcotics trafficking, casinos, labor racketeering, that her husband had a horse racing and a dog track down in Virginia, a lot of other She said he ran the Italian lottery in New York and New Jersey that brought him about $1 million a year. And then she named all the clubs that he owned, too, the gay clubs downtown. She said that she managed gambling ventures for him, and that generated $30,000 a week. A week, imagine that, in 1940-something. And described the trips to Italy where she dumped money for him to pay off people. And she also brought up the names Frank Costello and Albert Anastasia. So this is bad for Genovese. He's embarrassed by what's going on, and he blamed Stephen Franci. So he said, Franci, you were put there to mind things, you screwed up, and she's defected and so forth. So he told Anthony Strolla to find Francis and kill him. Strolla handed it over to Joe Valachi, and on June 18, 1953, Valachi lured Francis into Valachi's restaurant in the Bronx, where he was beaten and strangled to death, and he was left in his car in the Queens Midtown Tunnel. I don't know where that is. The killers were Pasquale Pagano and his nephew, Fiore Ciano, who was a narcotics dealer and whose mother was Joe Valachi's sister. For the record, Ciano disappeared at the end of April or May in 1964 from Patsy's Pizzeria on 2287 First Ave in New York. He committed some sort of crime, who knows what. Anyway, towards the end of her life, Anna, they never divorced, by the way, they're just separated. She worked as guest relations at the once Tony Warwick Hotel in Manhattan, where she also lived. I stayed there not long ago. I stayed there because the Beatles stayed there when they first came to New York, and I wanted to see the place. I think in its day, it really was something. I think that day has since passed. But still, it isn't a bad place. It's centrally located. In 1982, she suffered a stroke, and she was hospitalized at St. Vincent's, where she died. I'm going to do a second part on this, if you're interested. I'm going to talk about this guy, Dickie Orange, who was Orange Dickey, rather. I'm sorry, that was the Orange C. Dickey. He was a federal agent, a brave, brave guy, and I want you to know about him because he deserves to be known about. Okay. All right.